Today, we've got an amazing topic that we're going to cover: the father wound. What is it? How do we know we have one? Where does it come from? And more importantly, how to really heal it. So, I'm going to be joined by someone really special coming on, Genell. She's a coach who specializes in working with parent wounds. A lot of people don't necessarily realize that they actually have a very strong parent wound. And you only really know this when you ask someone a question. You say, who do you resent most in your life? Or who are the top 5 people you resent in your life? And unconsciously, people will come out and say, I resent my parents. I resent my dad. I resent my mom. I resent them for various reasons, for either the emotional or physical abuse I may have suffered as a child. I resent them for the lack of any emotional consolidation, affection, connection that I felt as a child. Maybe resent them for what we think today, for the way we've showed up. And we're like, I resent them for who I've become today and what I have to deal with, what I have to work with. And so when we're aware of what it is that really causes a parent wound, when we're really aware of how it shows up, we can really discover how we can correct it within our relationships, how we can work to heal it from within. What people don't realize, especially since we're coming to father wounds, is that it affects us in dating. Whether you're a man or a woman, it affects you because the masculine and the sense of having a masculine understanding is really missing, or it's been a toxic version of what we've been exposed to. So we don't really have a full and healthy understanding of what that healthy masculine is in our life, and therefore when we get into relationships, if you're a woman or you identify as the feminine, then to get that is very challenging. If you're a masculine or you identify as the man, then to show up as that is really challenging. So I'm going to bring Genell on right now. Drum roll, everybody. She's coming on. She's coming on. Is she coming on? Is she coming on? Yeah!
You did it. How's it
Hey,
going?
Genell. How are you?
I'm great. How are you doing?
I am good. Thank you. Thank you for jumping on. I really appreciate you coming on board here because my community and my audience can gain a lot by what you also have to offer, especially specifically working with parent wounds. This is what we work with, a huge part of what we do in the Gauntlet and all the other community programs we have, where we help people understand why they're showing up the way they're showing up and where these like conditioning patterns and wounds really come from. So you having had this experience, I think you'd have so much to be able to offer. So Genell, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself and how you got into doing what you do?
Absolutely. I'm going to put it into like 5 minutes instead of like
Yeah,
20. So
we have a schedule.
we do have a schedule. So
Exactly. We planned this, folks. We're not just skimming this. We're not just whipping it out. We have planned this. So Genell, take
first,
it away.
I want to thank you, Yats, for having me on your community. Everyone, hello. So grateful to be here. As what he was saying, I am a father and mother wound coach. I help women who all the way from who've never met their mother or father, who've been abandoned by either of their parents, people who've been sexually abused by their parents, all the way from those who parents had addiction, where now the daughter is suffering. So I do it all, and why and how, why I do it is because I know from experience of being a fatherless daughter. I lost my dad when I was 9 to drug abuse, and it really caused a lot of turbulence in my life, especially how you had said, yeah, it's dating. Oh my goodness. Emotionally unavailable men were like my go-to. And I had no idea why. I always was like, I just attract the wrong guys. No, the truth is I didn't address my father wound yet, wasn't able to heal from that. So subconsciously, I constantly felt comfortable with being with men who couldn't give me what I knew I deserved at the time.
That's the key word that you hit, that you said, I felt comfortable with men who couldn't give me what I deserved. And it's so unconscious, right?
Absolutely. I said I was ready for a relationship, but I knew internally, deep down, I didn't feel worthy.
Exactly. Exactly.
So,
Sorry, go on.
oh no. So it took me through a whirlwind of, I was so many negative coping, sex, drugs, alcohol, which I know we're going to go over. It's all in our routine that we have already scheduled. But it took me a whole whirlwind of coping. And when you don't take the time to, first and foremost, have awareness of where it's coming from and why you keep finding yourself in these cycles, the cycles are going to continue to repeat themselves until you get to the core wound of it all. And that's why I'm a firm believer of coaches, therapists. I love therapists, but at the same time, I mean, I've been in therapy since I was 3, and getting to the core of it is what we really need to be set free. So with that being said, I thought once I was able to heal and address my father wound, I realized there must be other women out there who are suffering the same thing and just aren't aware of why they keep finding themselves in these cycles, either people pleasing, abandonment, emotionally unavailable men. And that is where my coaching came into fruition. And it's been so amazing ever since. I've helped so many women all around the world. You know, time zones kind of affect me a little bit, India especially, because it's such a huge difference. But I'm trying to show up as much as I can within like time zones for women. And, you know, it's been amazing ever since.
That's amazing. You know, I find that, you know, I've had so many women in my group, as you may know. It's predominantly, I think, in the inner work space. It's a large community of women because women are open to accepting, you know, where their emotions play a part in their lives. Men are still growing into that a little bit. And so, you know, women are a big portion of my community. And so they say, I'm ready for love. I want this guy. I had a comment yesterday, actually, where someone said, you know, I'm so ready for a relationship, but every time I get into a relationship, the guy leaves me within a week and goes on to somebody else. And that relationship then lasts so long. And she said, you know, what is it about the guys I pick? And I said, the interesting thing is about, you have to look about not at what you're looking at, but what are you looking through? And what we're looking through is the eyes of wounding, the eyes of conditioning, the eyes of pain, the eyes, we're looking through these glasses, goggles, whatever, that tell us that this is what all you deserve and this is all you can get. And so we unconsciously work to reprove those beliefs. And, you know, even though we're ready on a conscious or like, you know, verbal front, we don't feel worthy of being truly ready on a subconscious front. And that's where our wound and our conditioning limit us, right?
Right. And if we're not worthy, if we don't feel worthy within, how do we expect someone else to see that worthiness through us?
Exactly. Yeah.
You know?
So thank you so much. Thanks so much for telling us about, like, you know, how you came to being what you did, because the best way to teach someone is actually having gone through something. And so that's the best way I think you can
teach
offer.
from experience.
So, exactly. And I'm so happy for all those women who have learned, you know, that there is hope for them and there is an opportunity for them to reparent themselves or create this like internal healing so that they can have a better future. So I appreciate you like helping the collective in general. So thank you, Genell.
I appreciate that.
Absolutely. So what I want to talk about that I find interesting is I want to talk about it from a male perspective, if you don't mind, if I jump into that, because a lot of people think that, you know, you can only have a father wound and only be influenced it if you are a woman and you've like, you know, felt the loss of a lack of a father. But a lot of males show up from a wounded perspective because there's not enough of like an emotional guidance from a father perspective. And so I know we talked about this a little bit, and I want to tell my audience here about how a lot of the time, whether you're you know, you identify as the masculine or the feminine, if you've dated a masculine that's had a wounded, like, you know, masculine perspective, whether they've either tried to overcompensate or they are unavailably, like, you know, they're not unavailable to show up, there are strong reasons for it. And for me personally, in my own life, I'd like to share with you guys and with you, Genell, that growing up, my dad was unavailable, really, like emotionally, physically. He just wasn't around. He was in the military when we were kids. And then after that, he just worked really hard because there were 5 of us kids, plus 2 of my cousins that my mom adopted. So there were 7 of us. And he had to like work his ass off to pay for it. And I was the youngest.
Right.
And what was interesting is that by the time he had me, he was so much older in his life as well. So he was less capable to show me the things you'd expect a dad would show us, you know, like how to play a game or how to like, you know, open a bottle or how to, you know, kick a ball, any of those things, or even how to like structure your life and how to be disciplined. And he wasn't available. And so what I realized was I was unconsciously growing up with this perspective without direction, without solidity, without like a sense of a masculinity that was really in there for my life. And I grew up expecting more from my mother. And it's so interesting because one wound attempts to get us to overcompensate on the other end, right?
For sure,
And so
yeah.
I wanted my mother to be so present for me because my dad was so absent, but she herself was already so fatigued. She was also not really emotionally capable. She was more of a provider rather than a nurturer parent. So I had two of those. And it ended up with me growing up with this identity for myself of being what we call today the whole Peter Pan, kind of guy, where I get stimulated by different things. And because I have a lack of internal structure, I'm so happy to be like drawn on this end, on this end, on this end. And how it developed, especially in relationships. And this is what I want you to understand, folks, is it developed with a lack of internal commitment to women in relationships. Because I wasn't taught around how to have a strong foundation, structure, discipline, commitment, understanding how to be secure enough to realize that my partner's disappointment doesn't mean something about me. But because I didn't have that healthy masculinity, every time I felt a partner who was disappointed, or even if they were distant, if they were traveling or whatever, I felt so insecure. And I felt like I had such a wounded masculine at that point that I wanted to overcompensate. And truth be told, to share with all of you guys, I would run out and seek the attention of other women. Because unconsciously, that was me attempting to run to my mom when I wasn't getting the focus or attention of my dad, and to hope I would get her attention. And that obviously led to to cheating, to so many other things, which, at the end of the day, destroyed my relationships. And so once I started healing on my own and with myself, I started to recognize that it is so important for me to have that level of guidance of masculinity, even if my dad can't give it to me, to be able to provide it for my own inner child. Yeah. Because otherwise I'm just wandering instead of being a real man, I'm just being a grown-up boy, like a man-child. And I'm just running from place to place, running from woman to woman. When it gets tough or challenging, I'd leave. And that's not how you create a healthy, committed relationship, right? So that's
amazing. I've totally dated some of you, and I'm sure some of the people watching can be like, yeah.
There's lots of me, past me. There's lots of past me in the world out there. I know this very well. A lot of them come back to me right now and be like, yo, what happened to you? So I'm well aware.
Who are you now? Yeah. No, I totally, and I was that person that was like, why do these guys keep leaving? But it's because I wasn't, like we said, I didn't feel worthy of that.
Exactly.
But and thank you for being vulnerable and sharing that from the male perspective.
Thank you very much. But just before we jump onto that, I want to latch onto the last statement that you said, where you said as a woman, you had dated so much of that. I want to ask the women out there, or even the men who date other men, or whoever dates the masculine, I want to ask you, have you had a similar experience where you have encountered or dated a man who can't stand his ground, couldn't hold true to commitment, wasn't disciplined enough to show up for the relationship, when the times got tough, tried to get attention and affection elsewhere? Because I also want to tell you one important thing. We are responsible for what we attract into our lives. And so even as the feminine, or as a woman, if you attract a man like that, it is because your femininity is feeling a wound from somewhere. Your femininity is limited or has been conditioned to be, not expressive enough, or you don't believe in it enough, even though it lives inside you. And so that's why we attract the opposites like that, to be able to trigger that within us. And it's so important, even through this conversation, to understand how healing the father wound can create healthy feminine. And that's what I want to ask you specifically about, Genell, because you're a woman, you identify as the feminine. I cannot, unfortunately, give perspective from there. But I want to ask, I know that you, as a girl, you lost your father when you were really young, you said, right?
9.
How old were you? 9. Yeah, that's
9.
Yeah, so you've lived basically 2/3 of your life without a father figure, so to speak.
Absolutely.
Or your biological father figure. So what I want to ask you is, as a girl, wouldn't that obviously influence you in some way, that you would have had to overcompensate with developing a masculine energy of your own because you didn't have that guidance or that masculine energy as from a father figure? And did that in many ways also repel relationships?
Oh my goodness. This is great.
Dropping all the
great. I'm so excited to talk about this. First things first is I've done so much studies, and it has been said that when a daughter doesn't have the father figure in their life, that father figure is what helps them shape into their femininity. And when I saw that, I was like, I remember my ex-boyfriend at the time, I was like, this is why I didn't have it. All correlates. And you wouldn't think that. You would think your mother, if you don't think logically, you would think, oh, my mom. No,
Yeah.
it's if your father was in your life, that's where you structure the feminine. And when you don't have that, like me, you're figuring it out on your own. And having been raised by a mother who was a mother and a father to me, all I knew was, I mean, I really struggled with the feminine until now. I'm sure hopefully you guys can feel feminine energy. But before, I was very in my masculine, where even in relationships, I would tell my partner I want them to be more masculine in a nice way. And I realized that I was so in my masculine that they wouldn't even be able to get up there if I had to come down to my feminine.
Right.
And it did affect relationships.
Would you, if you notice the type of men you attracted, would you attract men, you'd say, who were not confident within their own self? And so if they felt any challenge from you, they would try and like overcompensate with either anger or with being loud or with even trying to like push back in some way because they didn't feel secure enough to, in their own masculinity?
Yeah, I would say that. Or the men were more in their core feminine. Because obviously I'm in my trauma, so I'm attracting men who also had mother or father wounds.
Right, exactly. And, I just wanted to add to, from the developmental psychology perspective for you guys who are wondering, how does having a father affect, creating the feminine? So the masculine identifies, and this is just evolutionary and developmental psychology. Please read into it if you guys want to know more about it. But the masculine stands for stability, structure, safety, guidance, etc. So think about, a lot of stable, grounded-esque type of things. The femininity stands for flow, stands for creativity, stands for, in many ways, abundance, stands for belief, trust, faith, etc. Very magical, like flowy-based feelings or adjectives, so to speak. Now, if there isn't enough of that stability from the masculine, which is either any sort of parent, if there isn't enough of that stability or groundedness from the masculine, then the feminine does not feel safe enough to develop because it doesn't feel safe that if it flows, it can always come back to this structure and it can trust on it. A little girl needs to know that daddy's there to protect her no matter what happens. That's why that concept has been used in ads, in movies, everywhere, because it is a baseline of that little developing feminine needs to know that it has the safety of the masculine no matter what happens, no matter how it fucks up, no matter if it goes like near and far, that it will have that. And therefore, it allows it to flow more. It allows it to be more creative. It allows it to take more chance. But if it doesn't have that, then it restricts that level of flow, creativity, movement, dance, all of it, because it has to be more constrained. It has to be its own stability and structure, which now limits it from being creative and feminine and open.
Right.
So
yeah, that was great.
I just thought I'd take that opportunity to tell folks about that. So, but some people may be wondering, like, what is the definition, so to speak, of a father wound? I hope people have got it so far just from conversation of what we talked about, but I don't know if you want Genell to give everybody a definition.
Absolutely. So I would say, in my words, it's like the lack of a sacred bond between the father and daughter, which then when we don't have that, it results in many problematic ways. All the way from lack of boundaries, people pleasing, not feeling enough, needing to look externally for validation, everything that I've done in my past. I'm personally attacked, feeling unworthy of love. So there's a lot of things, but it all comes down to not having that sacred bond, just like what Yats was saying, with your father.
Right. You touched on an interesting one where you said people pleasing and unworthiness, right? Wouldn't you say that from the feminine's perspective, because I'll come back to the masculines in a second, but from the feminine's perspective, that if you had a strong, stable, like we talked about, strong, stable masculine to support you, to be able to make you feel safe, to tell you that no matter how you fuck up, what you do, how you flow, that you are valuable, that you are trusted, you are safe, right? Don't you think that the feminine would not need to people please? It would not need to abandon itself to achieve some other connection with a wounded masculine, etc., that it would feel more sure of itself.
Absolutely not. Yeah, because there would be no reason to please, because we know we're whole and complete with or without. So if this person doesn't come, see you never, the next person will.
Right. Exactly.
So
thank you. That was,
yeah, not having that bond with your father, everyone listening, you know, I ignored it for so many years up until like all of my 20s, until it hit me in the face. And I honestly was in a really dark place of like suicidal ideation where I needed to end up going to rehab. I'm getting really vulnerable right now. And it's because I couldn't take the ignoring for so long. Deep down, we know that pain is still there, but our protective self can be so good at pretending like we have it all together until an event in your life, which a lot of my clients come to me with like severe breakup or getting triggered and parenting their child, that they realize, oh my God, this is my father wound or this is my mother wound. So it's really important to realize that a lot of us may not even be aware, but if you really think back of what you lacked from your father, there's a really good chance that there is a father wound.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. I think especially for like from my studies and experience, I think it is important and imperative for the feminine, for women, the feminine, however you'd want to identify on the female spectrum, to actually go into looking at what is the wound that I have with my father. And the thing is, your father doesn't have to have been physically absent or even like have not be physically present. If he was emotionally absent, if he had his own coping mechanisms of alcohol, of his own like drug abuse, of his own, maybe even his own coping mechanisms of like cheating in relationships, etc., then what happens is, as the feminine, you're already constantly feeling a wounded identity because you're like, I don't feel the safety of this individual. He's not emotionally around for me. He's showing me by the way he's treating other women or other people in his life that he cannot like depict strong masculinity and safety. So the father wound doesn't only have to come from a father who's not present or passed away. And that's just what I want to make clear, because there are so many ways that if the masculine or the father is just not showing up in the way he must to rear his children, that the father wound can be absorbed.
Right. And just to piggyback off that, it could also be, like you had said, a father, I'm just going from what I've experienced with clients, a father who's never shown up ever. I have women who've never met their father. A father who's been in and out of your life, which also sets the standard that men will come in and out of your life and that they're not trustworthy, which is not true. Men are, the good men are. If your father was struggling with addiction, or he put his addiction before you, which is what I struggled with my father, and that healing journey, I constantly, in the beginning of my journey, I thought and was programmed to think my dad chose drugs over me. But now I can come from a place of compassion, knowing that it wasn't him choosing that over me. It was just him caught up in his own cycle and his own story, his own life. So not to take it personal, but a lot of us put the self-blame, and that's even with daughters who have fathers who are in and out, who don't show up, have fathers who are also workaholics, like how you had said with your father. That still shows the father wound. It's not just
because work is just another coping mechanism, right? Work is just a socially acceptable drug. Like, you know, the addiction to work or like working constantly is just what's socially acceptable, especially in a capitalist or consumer society where you're like, okay, yeah, you know, my dad's working all the time. He's bringing money home. So this is just acceptable. But the principle of parenting is that, you know, if you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs or whatever, you have to keep going upwards. You can't just live on the baseline and say this is a complete child. It's impossible. You have to go upwards to say, okay, now that this is provided, I need to go next and next and next. But for a lot of men, what women may not realize is that they use work as an escape. They use work as the space for them to not emotionally have to deal with their children, their partners, everybody else. And so they also use work as a sense of identity. And at that point, when they do so, just as you said, they're putting that coping mechanism ahead of like rearing the child. But inner work is so important because, just as you said, inner work is so important because it lets you realize that you are now responsible for healing those wounds, and that your parent did not show up because they consciously chose to abandon you. What they consciously chose was to put their focus onto something that would help them escape dealing with their own wounds. And so
Absolutely.
that's really what a coping mechanism is. People can call them addictions, people can call them anything else, but they're really coping mechanisms for them to deal with their own wounds. But as a consequence, as children, we are abandoned. As a consequence, we're, not really reared, we're not really connected with or groomed, So I
Absolutely.
wanna ask you a quick question. A lot of people may not realize that they have ways to avoid dealing with the father wound. And I mean, I just talked about coping mechanisms. Coping mechanisms is one of my favorite subjects. If you guys are really interested, there is a very famous psychotherapist and psychologist. His name is Dr. Gabor Mate. He's Hungarian and he's now Canadian. And he actually talks all about how addictions are just coping mechanisms. They're just means for human beings to be able to cope with trauma that they don't know how to heal. And so the focus is not on the fact that they're addicted to something. The focus should be on the fact of how should I heal that wound, which takes away the coping mechanism. So coming to you and, in your experience working with clients, what are the different types of coping mechanisms you see people using to avoid recognizing the wounds that they have?
So many, so many too that I've done. I would say the people pleasing is a big one. Parentification, which is, for those who don't know, it's having to be a parent for your parent, which then in return, you were never able to be a child. So you lacked that childhood that you were so deserving of. Sexual promiscuity, that is a huge one. And that was my coping. And it wasn't even the act of the sexual act. It was the validation that I needed. Yeah. And
I'm guilty of that as well.
When I think back, I'm like, it wasn't even the physical act. It was like just knowing that this person wanted me. And then obviously after feeling awful about myself. Another coping is accepting the bare minimum, where you know you are deserving of so much more. But when you weren't shown that foundation from your father of what you are deserving of, you accept less than.
Right.
Also, some of them avoiding relationships altogether, fear of intimacy, fear of getting close. Not that many, but I do run into that as well. Right. I have a few clients now that have a fear of intimacy, a fear of getting close. Why?
Yeah, because you're going to get hurt in some way, right? So you just want to avoid it altogether.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. But you're not avoiding you're not working with what's actually causing it. You're just like trying to close your eyes to it and saying, okay, if I don't see it, it's not actually happening, but it's still eating up at you.
Absolutely. And I've seen that a lot in men. Even though I don't coach men, I've seen that like the quote unquote player. But you know what? It's not that he's a player. It's that he has a fear of commitment because his father or mother probably didn't show up fully for them. So they're like, they're just going to leave. So why don't I just go through all these women?
Exactly.
Because everything's fine. I'm never going to be alone because I'm always going to have someone temporarily in my life.
Yeah. And, on that topic, narcissism, right? And this is something that I want to offer my audience. I talk about it all the time. I have a very different perspective than what is just, put out there about narcissism and in narcissistic support groups. Why? Because I've studied it extensively. And two, because I displayed characteristics of one. And narcissists, just as you said, they are individuals who love to manipulate people around to be able to get what they need. What they need is basically validation. They need a sense of identity. They need people to approve of them. And so people don't realize, they think narcissists are just very confident people who step on people and move ahead. But they're highly insecure people. They're people who are so wounded from within, who have a very strong wound with either their father or their mother.
Yes.
So they don't have a strong enough identity for themselves. Therefore, they feel that I would rather hurt someone else than actually witness and heal my own wound. And it takes a special, it takes a deep level of pain to actually continue with that. It's not as easy as you think to hurt someone else and just be fine with it. It takes a deep level of pain where you're like, I would avoid my hurt at any cost. And I'd much rather hurt someone else to be able to get that. Now, men strongly suffer from this. Someone talked about emotional avoidancy. Yes, because it's cultural and it's also the way conditioning happens. So we're talking about father wounds. And if a boy is in a space where for a boy, it's tremendously important the nurture, care, and love that he gets from his mother as well to be able to create strong masculinity and feel safe to be in his own identity. But if a boy is also conditioned by like his father to say emotions are weak, and then if he goes and runs to his mother to display emotions, if his mother doesn't hold space for him, that's just double validation of, okay, emotions are weak, you can't have them. And so this boy now says, well, fuck this. Every time I try and get emotional, people are like fucking cutting me off here. People are just like shutting me down. I'm just going to go and obsess about like my toys, which as he grows up becomes about sports, which as he grows up becomes work, which as he grows up becomes money. And so this is now the trend for this boy who's now grown into a man to become so strongly emotionally avoidant that when he gets into relationships, because at the end of the day, we're human beings, we need physical and emotional connection. When he gets there, he tastes the tip of like the iceberg, or like just on the tip of his tongue, he gets a taste and he's like, this is what I want. But the moment he has to put the spoon in his mouth, the moment he has to get emotional intimacy, the moment he has to accept the commitment and connection, he's like, oh, fuck this. Because this is like what I'm not used to at all. I've been shamed around this. I'm like, I've been shut down around this. Emotions are dangerous because I could get rejected just like my mom and dad rejected me all over again. And that's why they would rather shut down someone else than be shut down themselves. Sorry, I just wanted to take that moment to jump in on it.
That was great. That was amazing.
To give people perspective, because especially like, a lot of us have been in relationships with people like that, and we need to understand why they do what they do. They're not just ignorant people who want to fuck with someone. They just don't know how truly to get to their vulnerable side, because their vulnerable side, their inner child, was basically put in a box and said, no emotional expression for you. So
yes, you're like speaking to me of my past self with my ex. It's so crazy because my ex, one of my exes, when I was in my trauma, was buying car after car after car and workaholic, and I didn't know because I was in my trauma. Trauma bond relationships, trauma attracts trauma, and now I can come to him wherever he is, wish him so much love. But I know he was just coming from that really wounded place. And I'm sure you've seen it before, is when we haven't healed our trauma and something really triggering happens, it takes us back to that inner child phase. And I saw that so many times with him. And now I just know it's like so wounded, and the narcissism isn't even like something to take personal for me. It's just like he was just so incapable of going deep to doing the work to heal, that all I have to do is come to that acceptance that it has nothing to do with me.
That is beautiful. That's, that is what healing does. And this is important for all of you folks out there. This is such a good conversation. I'm really loving this, Genell. Thank you for like being so vulnerable and talking about this stuff. But healing is not about like showing up on top of the mountain with your legs folded and being like, oh, inner peace, like being the fucking turtle from Kung Fu Panda. That's not what like healing is really about.
That's coping. That's low level coping, high level coping.
Yeah, exactly. Healing is simply about being aware of how you show up. Your awareness is about knowing, okay, this is how I show up, and this is what's brought me here. This is the emotional baggage that I'm unconsciously dragging with me, because I don't realize that I'm bringing this with me. I've been conditioned to live this kind of life so strongly. But then healing is knowing, okay, this is what I've brought with me. It's not a terrible thing, but it needs my time. It needs my attention. It needs my focus, and it needs my love. All things that we absolutely refuse to fucking give ourselves, but we will give to everybody else on the fucking planet. Time, energy, love, commitment. We will give it to everybody except truly to ourselves. But when we actually give it to ourselves and to our wounds and where we're coming from, we realize that everyone around who attempts to maybe hurt us, or who responds in a certain way, or who shows up narcissistically or whatever, that they're all hurting so badly, but they all just don't know about it. They don't know how to get there. And so instead of anger, your pendulum switches to compassion. You start to see people with so much more acceptance, openness, love, not because you've become like this yogi who can see it, but because you're actually working on your life.
Absolutely. Right. And I think sometimes with the posts we make, at least I know some of my posts can be so triggering that I can get some hate comments that I'm like, oh my goodness. But I come from like, you know what? They're just hurting and they're just, and that's okay. So I come from compassion. I don't take it personally. So like you had said, I feel like everyone's just doing the best they can with what they know and where they are in their own process.
Exactly. As you said, everybody's doing the best they can with what they know. And if we choose healing, growth, and commitment to ourselves today, then tomorrow we know more. And so tomorrow we show up differently, right? And tomorrow we have more of like an openness, connection, compassion, etc. And we can even hold space for relationships or partners in our relationships who are also healing. And we don't judge them, we don't criticize them, we don't blame them, we don't shame them. You know, it's easier to hold space for them and truly connect and grow together in a relationship, you know?
Right. And your communication gets so much better.
Yeah. Oh my God. Absolutely. Because then communication isn't just about like, hey, you did this wrong. Like, you know, now you need to tell me I'm sorry. But it is more about like, I feel this way because I know I'm bringing this to the table and I apologize. You know, I didn't realize that I said this to you because it triggered a wound of mine and that's on me and I'm working through it. And I love you and I want you to give me some space and compassion to work with.
Yes. You know? I love that. That's so healing. It's so healing when you're on the same journey as your partner. I think it's so big and so important to be on the same level of consciousness, or even just both growing at the same, not the same pace, because everyone grows at different paces, but just both knowing you're on that journey of healing and wanting to better yourself. Because that's why I see so many relationships, even with my clients who are in marriages or not. Sometimes they do lack a lot when the partner isn't growing as well.
Absolutely. So what do you want to talk about next, Genell, when it comes to relationships? I'll throw this one on you because, to be honest, I'm not sure if I stuck to the plan or not. That's mostly
we're good. We're all over the place, but that's okay. I love it. This is great. Everyone seems like they love it. Everyone's commenting. Yeah,
it's like great conversation. If anybody has questions, by the way, throw your questions.
There has been some questions.
If anybody has questions, it's the best way to work through it. Does the father, I see one question.
Yeah,
does a
please
father
keep asking questions.
For men? If not, what does it look like? Do you want me to take that one?
Yeah, for sure.
All right. So the father wound does not look the same for a man. The same as like the mother wound for a boy does not necessarily look like the same as it would for a girl. And yes, we're going to save this life, just to let you guys know. But for a man, the father wound, as I said, would show up with a lack of his own internal stability. So you think about it this way, right? Now, the feminine needs the stability to be able to allow herself to be feminine and like, you know, flow, etc. And that's how it gets created. Now, the masculine, while it's being created, very strongly needs nurturing, love, etc. So it can keep feeling supported to be the masculine. Before I jump into the lack of a father, I just want to say, I've had someone say to me before, and these were the exact words which really entertained me, but they were like, who are you to say that the masculine should be with stability and strength and whatever, and the feminine should be with nurturing and blah, blah, blah. I was like, listen, yo, I didn't say anything, but I was like, obviously this person is insecure about where they're coming from with their projections. But what I want people to understand is that it's not weak in any way, shape, or form to go with the flow, to feel the universe, to feel creativity, to feel trust. Those are such infinitely powerful things. I am a man, and I can tell you, I would not survive today if I did not have strong feminine energy surrounding me. It is impossible. Because for the masculine to even stay like, you know, grounded, stable, to have guidance and support, it needs to have such powerful, unselfish in a weird way, support, love, and nurturing energy from the feminine. Without which, what does the man start to do? He starts to get obsessed, over-obsessed by work, by things, by toys, by like fancy cars, by money. And so the direction for that is completely lost. Now, that's to tell you how powerful it is for the masculine to have the feminine, for it to fully express itself. But for the masculine to have the masculine guidance of a father, that's the first stages of the boy's life, where he starts to understand, okay, what does structure actually look like? What does discipline actually look like? What does being stable, grounded actually look like? How can I recreate these things in my life? So while he needs the feminine to develop himself, the masculine in his life provides a level of guidance. It provides a level of direction, more so than most other cases. And so why it's interesting, people can see then, you have what we call the wounded masculine, right? Which is developed into an adult, where someone overcompensates. It's what we call toxic masculinity, etc. So they overcompensate with a lot of money, sleeping with a lot of women, etc. People look at this and they're like, okay, this seems like there's some level of masculinity because he doesn't come off as a feminine person. But it's a toxic masculinity because it hasn't had the appropriate guidance of masculine figures or identities in his life before. He hasn't seen how a man should actually treat a woman because he hasn't had a father figure show up for his family, for his wife, for his mom to provide, to really hold good and hold stead. And so the possibilities of what a man would show up with a father wound would either be, you know, someone who's more effeminate, who doesn't have more trust in himself to really be the leader, guide, to really take responsibility. One thing that I've really noticed, and I think this is from myself that I want to offer the people out there, is I found men who refuse to accept responsibility for where their potential actions or behavior has caused their partners harm, even if it wasn't consciously. And so when their partners come back to them and they're like, you know, they yell at them, they scream or whatever, these men disconnect or they tell those women to fuck off because they don't know how to hold space, grounding and stability and say, okay, I recognize the part I played in attracting this person. I recognize the part I played in doing this. I also recognize the part in realizing that the woman's dysregulation is not truly about me. It's also about her own wounds showing up. Whereas a weak man takes it personally. One without a strong masculine takes that personally and either ends the relationship, blames the other person, puts shame or blame, or ends up like obsessing about other things or cheating, etc. So that's just what I wanted to say, how it shows up for men. Thank you for letting me rant on that.
Totally. I am also a strong believer. I'm not sure if you feel the same as, I think actually you do. We talked about this. Is like we both have the feminine masculine in ourselves. And it's all about how we show up in certain instances. For example, with my clients, and when it comes to healing the father wound with them, I'm in my masculine. Why? When I'm coaching. But then after I'm done coaching, I'll like go to yoga or I'll go for a hike and get grounded. And that's my feminine. So a lot of times it's all about the balancing the masculine and feminine. But what you're talking about, of course, like what he was saying was the core, like feminine, like I want my divine masculine. Like I've done all of that and I want to be that divine feminine for my partner.
Right.
But it's also balancing when things, you know, uncertain in life of what you're doing. So I looked at some of the comments and it looks like we need to start a podcast together. Someone's really looking forward to knowing how to heal it. And also, I think that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw some other comments in there, but they're so quick. I can never keep it track of it. Like, I'm a typical man. I can't multitask. Women are so amazing.
I got you.
Someone talked about it. It was actually a really funny video that I watched, and he was like, dude, expecting a guy to multitask is the dumbest thing ever because women have been created so powerfully to multitask. You're meant to have one baby on your hip, talking to your mom on the phone, ironing something, or like stirring the pasta at the same time. It's like, and you guys can do it so fucking well. There's power in it. Whereas the guy is just like, he's sitting with his calculator, and then someone says to him, like, can you also calculate this? He's like, God damn it, I forgot my fucking numbers, you idiot. Like, why'd you come in at this point, you know?
That's why I only ask guys like one question. If I'm texting, I'm like, if I ask 3 questions, I'm only going to get 1 question answered.
Exactly. I'm glad you're well aware of that. Please be well aware of that with me, that you will only get 1 question answered at a time. All right.
Sweet. Someone said, how do we know which wound we have, whether mother or father, and how to heal it? So since I focus on mother and father wounds, so first, I can't talk right now. First, I focus on the father wound because that was something I knew was so dear and close to my heart. But then I realized that when I was out of my really healthy, amazing relationship with my ex-partner, who I send him so much love, and he was the most healthiest relationship I've ever been in, just didn't work out with us. I realized that I had a mother wound as well. that I didn't even realize was even a thing. And a lot of it came from not getting that physical affection from my mother and not knowing how to be physically affectionate in my relationship, the healed version of me. Because the unhealed version of me was all about physical affection, which is so interesting.
Right.
Because I was looking for that validation.
What you're lacking, right? So that's what you so strongly unconsciously seek from the wounded side.
Absolutely. So for those asking, do I have a mother or father wound? A lot of what I'm seeing with clients of the mother wound is a mother who is parentification, where the mother expects you to be her parent, whether the mother could be narcissistic. It really varies, but the healing, you quote me on this too, how you feel about it, is very similar. And that's why I focus on the two mother and father wounds.
Yeah, I think what's interesting from my perspective is that having a parent wound, it almost is the same in the sense that like you're lacking something and your life is an unconscious journey of trying to find it. And that's why you try to find it in partners or you run away from it in partners. So looking at, you know, for me, every one of us has almost both versions of wounds in some way. But most of us will have one parent who either showed up in a certain way really strongly or not. I've noticed that women predominantly have father wounds and men predominantly have mother wounds, which they don't want to accept or discuss. And so, because if you look at the evolutionary dynamic, the feminine needs the masculine to create balance, right? And the masculine needs the feminine to create balance. And so if that especially is missing, then this creation of one side gets really warped. And so, you know, especially because relationships, the way evolution had designed it was to like create and find some attraction of the opposite sex, to procreate. And so the wound with the opposite sex parent is what really translates into dating, is what I found in relationships and partnerships and stuff. And so, you know, with men, a lot of men, it is important for them to recognize what the relationship was like with their mothers. Some of them had overbearing mothers, some of them had provider mothers, some of them had mothers who didn't show up. But a good way to identify it, I would say, is to, as easy as look at what your relationship is like with that parent. And that it will so easily tell you, do you try to run away from them? Do you try to ignore them? Do you try to oppress your ideas onto them? Do you feel invalidated by them? So look at the individual parent and you will see where you seem to have a stronger bond of a wound and how it influences you more or less. That's how I would like identify it with clients or, you know, people on my programs and stuff. So
absolutely. And someone asked, what if someone has a large father and mother wound? Then come see me. No, I'm just kidding. But on a serious note, I have clients come to me where neither of their parents are in their lives. And with that being said, it's just the work that we do. It's the same work that we're going to talk about. I know you guys are like waiting for us to tell you how to heal it. But I just think it's also so important because so many people are unaware of it. So that's why we're taking so much, like a longer time to really discussing it and identifying it before we get into the healing of it all. So if that's why you guys are wondering why we're taking a little longer, that's why.
It's because we're coming up with answers as we talk. We're like, oh my God, what should I say to them? What would I want to tell them? We're making up stuff.
And so yeah, it's fine if you have both wounds. I noticed that with some of my clients, honestly, a lot of my clients come to me with both mother and father wounds. Since I expanded that, I've not had one client. And you know what? If a client comes to me with a father wound, they then realize they have a mother wound as well.
Yeah. Exactly.
I just had a client do that and I'm like, oh my God. And then she had an argument with her mom and I'm like, oh my God, what did I do? But you know what? I just brought more clarity and consciousness to what was going on. So, and you have to think about it this way. If you have a deep father wound, what are the chances of you having a mother wound as well? Because if your father attracted your mother and your mother attracted your father, chances are that could have been based on trauma, especially in that time and age.
Yeah. And what was their relationship like? Because that was your first idea of a romantic relationship in your life. So, you know, it creates an imprinting in your subconscious and that's what we move forward with. But I just want to tell you guys also, for those of you who identify as having like a strong mother and father wound, like I literally identify with you guys on both ends. I actually had a strong mother wound that I was conscious of, and then grew into understanding, okay, what's the part that my father played in my life as well moving forward, you know? And it all starts with us also understanding that, okay, let's be realistic about where they showed up and where they didn't. Let's not shame, judge, or criticize them, because that prevents us from seeing the truth. That prevents us from actually working with anything. Now we're just filled with anger, rage, and resentment, so we can't actually see, what do I heal with? And so, you know, separating that to say, okay, fuck this noise. I need to heal. I need to be able to grow. How can I focus on what I'm feeling? How can I focus on what I'm lacking and where it really comes from? So what I think we should do, Genell, is I think we should jump into the reparenting aspect, the healing aspect. What do you think? Are you good with that?
I'm totally good with that. Guys,
awesome.
We're going to the healing.
Yeah, so we had a lot of questions on, okay, how is it that you can, how do you actually heal these wounds? So this is like the juicy shit coming up right now. I'll go first to say that from my perspective, in terms of like the work that I've done through like development psychology and, you know, child psychology, and understanding what is the need of the adult based on what we've lacked as a child, to me, the biggest thing that I've realized is needed is good reparenting. And so for those of you guys who want to understand what reparenting really is about, I would encourage you to research it yourself. It's such a phenomenal psychological journey. I don't even want to say technique, because it's not something that's just so simple, but it is basically the act of parenting your inner child. So the child that still lives within you. So actually, first I should say, whether you realize it or not, the child that's within you from when you were a kid, it still lives within you right now. Yes. So the traumas that you have experienced then are actually hidden within your body and your subconscious, and you're just not aware of it because the ego creates good coping mechanisms. But this is all living strongly within you. And so what's important is first to accept, okay, I have this little being inside me that is still unhealed, that is still looking for guidance, that is still looking for support, that is still looking to have some sort of healthier masculine support and guidance, so that this little child can flourish the way that they need to. You have to recognize that first. And then reparenting is the act of understanding, who can I be for this little child to be able to provide this childhood in a weird way, to provide the structure, guidance, love, and nurturing that this child didn't get. And so you're essentially parenting this inner child inside you by yourself and on your own. And it sounds really tricky and crazy, but it's a tremendously powerful,
it's so healing,
absolutely life-changing technique. So Genell, why don't you tell us a little bit about how you use it in your work? So with a father or a mother, how do you use it?
So first things first is the way I kind of, when a client comes to me, we discuss what needs to be healed and what we're working through. And so I know what I'm going into. And then we release all of that pain. I do a lot of energy work and energy clearing and all of that. And I do a lot of breath work. So it's feeling your feelings, you know, like in order to heal, we need to feel what we're afraid to feel. I have clients that are scared to even reach out to me and book a call with me because they don't know what's going to come up. You know, our nervous system creates, as you were talking about, a protective self over us because it doesn't want us to feel those emotions that we felt as a child. But it's a blessing and a curse. Because a blessing because it wants to protect us, but it's a curse because we still have all of those stuck emotions and energy inside of our body that can't move. And I help my clients clear that out. Then after we've cleared it out, then comes the reparenting, like what Yats was saying, and the inner child work. I'm going to give you guys an example. I had a client that broke up with her boyfriend, or he broke up with her a couple weeks ago, and she was like hysterical and didn't know what to do. And she texted me, and she was a new client. We've only had like a session together. And automatically I'm sending her a voice text on my phone. And I'm like, all right, what you're going to do is you're going to close your eyes. And you're going to take yourself back to that last time that you were throwing a tantrum, that you're throwing a tantrum right now. Think back to when was the last time you threw that tantrum. So she's like, okay. So she was doing it. She was totally thought I was BSing her when I was in this voice text. I just intuitively, I like, as a coach, as you know, it just comes to me. So when I'm like, close your eyes, I said, bring yourself back to the time where you felt like you were throwing a tantrum.
Mm-hmm.
And then I want you to give that little girl a hug. Like you now, I want you to give that little girl a hug and ask her what she needs. And then I
Yeah.
said, let me know how that goes. And she even told me, she's like, I honestly thought you were insane. Because I was like, I just texted my coach telling her I had a mental breakdown. And she's telling me to do this inner child work. She did it. And she was like, oh my
Yeah.
goodness. I felt every single thing. That
Mm.
little girl, I saw her vividly. I felt everything. And we both cried together. And I
Yeah.
held her. And I felt better after.
That's amazing.
So
And
I
you know,
wanted to
that
share
is,
that.
it's, thank you so much for actually sharing that with us, because, you know, whether people get to work with you or not, or work with me or not, it's good for them to know that there's hope, that there's a way that you can actually work through this, because you deserve to work through this. You guys, all of you, and this is not some bullshit like, you know, Dove ad, don't sue me Dove, which says like you're worth it, blah, blah, blah. You're probably worth it. I mean, that's L'Oreal. But you know, you, whatever the ad says is great. But the truth is just that each one of us actually has, not is just gifted, actually has the chance to live our lives to the fullest potential of what we feel, who we
Mm.
are. But it requires us healing what has happened to us along the way. And that cannot be changed. I wish truly, when I listen to the trauma, I've been working with like trauma for so many years now. I've been working with people's pain and wounds for so many years. When I hear some of the things people have gone through, I feel like I wish I could go back in their lives and like click that rewind button and like erase it and change it, because
Mm-hmm.
of how hurt people feel in the present moment, what they show up as.
Yes.
But I always feel whenever I see someone with that level of pain or trauma, I see so much capability and potential. As weird as it sounds, I feel like the universe, God, circumstance, life, whatever has put us in that place because it's saying to you, I'm giving you a bigger hill to climb because I know you have stronger legs than everybody else. And it says, I want you to climb this because then the view from where you get to overcoming this is so much more beautiful as a human experience than everybody else who just goes through their fucking life not asking questions. And so
Yes.
when I get people coming into the group, last night I actually had, I'm not sure if you've heard of holotropic breathwork, but I take people in my groups through various like very challenging breathwork regimes, because they challenge your nervous system to be able to get a physical release of emotions. And so I took them through holotropic breathwork and this deep meditation where I took them to the first place or time in their life where they actually hit their core wounds of
Mm.
abandonment, of rejection, of invalidation. And people initially were so hesitant. They were like, I don't know if I want to do this, naturally, because you're in this space. But, it's my responsibility to make them feel comfortable, to feel trusted. And when I take them through that space, I say, I want you to do me a favor. I want you to bring a pillow with you when you're here in the session. I used to do this a lot in person, but now I have to do it online, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And when you get through that moment where people can actually see that point in their lives where they're like, holy shit, that little girl or boy inside just wanted that hug from daddy, or just wanted to
Mm.
pick him up or pick her up and just say, it doesn't matter if you got a B in school, you're still so important to me. It doesn't matter if you're scared of failing, if you're not going to perform, if you don't come to church, if you don't do anything, you are so beautiful and important to me, and your importance is not dependent on those things. And when they get to see that child in that moment and seeing that all that child wants is that, they just break the fuck down. And like the
Mm.
pillow is for them to bury their heads in and just cry and scream and shout and let it all out, just as you did with like the somatic release.
Yes.
It's so important because we're now giving ourselves the permission to see the pain that we have ignored for so many years. And I want to tell you something, guys, that you may not realize. Remember, I told you before that that little child lives inside you? That child is basically your emotional engine, believe it or not. And so the moments when you flip out and you may get like really, depending on what your survival program is, if you get into a fight scenario and you're throwing tantrums, you're fighting with your partner and you're going crazy, that's because that child is waiting to be heard from 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago. And so each year that it's not heard, the child becomes louder and louder. And so your actions in the present become louder and louder because they're waiting to be heard, not now. You don't want your partner to hear you. What you really want is you want your parent to hear you from 40 years ago. And so when you go back to hear that child and what they really wanted, what they really asked for, and the love that they pleaded for, because that's all they wanted as a child, then that child feels heard. And if you give that child that love as a masculine, if you imagine yourself reparenting yourself as the parent, the male parent going back, being able to go to the, let's say you're a girl or you identify as a feminine, to go back to that little girl, to rub your hands through her hair and say, I feel you, my little darling. You're so sweet. You're so important to me. You're so loved. Daddy's here to protect you, to keep you safe, to make sure that you are the most important thing in our lives, to make sure that I will be here for you no matter what happens, whether you slip, you fall, and I will do my best with everything I have going on to show up for you. Then that little girl or little boy in that moment feels so heard that in the present moment, if someone challenges them, they're like, that's okay. I feel heard. I feel safe. I don't need you to really see me for me to feel seen, because I'm seeing where I'm coming from. And their reactivity starts dropping, their connection starts improving. I tell everybody, sorry, I know, Genell, I've gone for a while, but I just want to
No, you're fine.
Is each of us human beings is like an emotional battery. Okay, so think about it, that each one of you has 100 points of your emotions and you decide where you get to use them. And so if 60 points of those are consumed by pain, by trauma, by difficulty, and are therefore showing up as reactivity, as trauma, as triggers, as you fighting back with someone, or running away and avoiding, then you only have 40 to be able to create expansive love, connection, and creation. And 40 is not enough. And so what healing really does is it takes that 60 and it starts converting it more into open, expansive areas. And so the 60 of, like, you know, trauma, pain, like triggers that have been coming up for you, the wounds from your past, start dropping to 20. Now you have 80 points to be able to create love and expansiveness and connection, because we are only capable of 100 overall. So if you can dedicate those 80 to creating a more positive, open, connected life with partnerships for yourself, because you've healed your wounds or you're healing your wounds, isn't that what's most important?
Yes, yes.
Sorry, I just like jumped on that train and monopolized that conversation. But
and it all
it's what I
comes
do.
down to self-love. You know, when we have enough love to give, then we're able to give that love to our inner child.
Yeah.
And it, like you said, it really does make you so full. I feel so full. Like, I don't need, back then it was like I needed a man to feel that security because I didn't have that from my father. And now I'm like, I'm good with or without. I am complete with or without a man.
Absolutely. And everything else, like even a man or a woman, now complements you. It doesn't complete you, which is so important for people to know. You know, we need the complementing because we're social beings and we procreate and etc. But we don't need the completing. And there's a big difference.
And then it's more like, are you enough for me? Not am I enough for you?
Right.
Because before it was always like going on a date and then being like, oh, do they like me? And now it's more like, do I like them? Do I like how I felt, how my nervous system felt at that moment?
So important. So I would like to do like a little inner child exercise, but before that, I want to check if there's anything you want to bring up in terms of the healing aspect right now.
No, I think everything's great. I think this conversation's amazing, and I think we have to do it again eventually if anyone wants that. But it's been amazing. Yeah,
we absolutely should do it again. We can pick different topics for sure, and I'm sure we can riff like crazy for so long. But
yeah, we could talk forever. So get on that exercise.
Yeah, so what I want to do for you folks, because I know y'all have jumped on and y'all really want to, you know, understand how the healing can work and how you can really connect with your own child self and, you know, maybe even understand your own wound and heal it. I want to offer you something that I do all the time, and I love inner child meditations. It's one of my specialties. Make sure you're not lying down, because I know my voice puts people to sleep. I have a couple of my students on here, Michelle, some of the others, who are like, yes, we know, we're well aware that his students fall asleep. So you guys can sit back. We're just going to do a meditation for like 5 or 7 minutes, right? So I just want you guys to give yourselves this time, this patience, plug in your headphones, sit in a quiet space. And so now I invite all of you to sit back with your eyes closed, to just allow yourself to take a few easy breaths. Slow, easy breaths in. Slow, easy breaths out. Let's inhale for 5 seconds through our nose. few, 3, 4, 5. And now let's exhale slowly for 7, 4, 5, 6, 7. And inhale again. Pull up your diaphragm nice and big. And exhale. And inhale. Nice long exhale. I invite you to continue breathing now at your own pace, to allow each one of your inhales to be longer, to be deeper, and to allow each one of your exhales to be slower and longer. Allow yourself to just settle in to your body. Your eyes closed, allow your mind to simply flip and wander. As you're doing this right now, I invite you to think of the last moment in your life where you felt really triggered. Maybe you felt a lot of pain. Maybe you felt afraid, felt abandoned, felt scared, felt angry, felt hurt, betrayed. I invite you to go back to that moment, but just on the surface, not to relive it. And as you're in there, and you recognize the pain that you're going through, I want to ask you, where have you seen this pain before in your life? If you were to recognize that little boy or girl or that little child inside you, where have they experienced that same feeling before in your life? Where have they felt the threat of someone leaving? Where have they felt the fear of someone not returning their love? Where have they felt the fear of someone not being there for them? Someone leaving, someone not showing up? Where have they felt the feeling or the fear of not being enough? I invite you to just think of that sweet little child who all they wanted was love, connection, and someone showing up. And so in this moment, I invite you as the adult, as the present version of you, to show up, whether it was as the father or the male figure, or the mother or the female figure, to show up as that parent from whom you sought that love, that protection, that safety. To show up as that strength, protection, love, and to pick up this little child in your arms, this sweet little version of you, this boy or this girl or this child. Hold them strong in your arms with a nice big hug. I invite you to hug yourself in this moment. Rub your hands along your shoulders, your arms, your back. Feel what it feels like, as if you were that child in that moment, receiving love, receiving care, receiving guidance. And I invite you to say these words out loud. You are so special. You are so beautiful. You are so important to me. No matter what you do, no matter what happens, no matter where you go, you are so important to me. It doesn't matter to me whether you do well. It doesn't matter to me whether you try and show something good to me or not. You are special just by being you. And now I invite you to say these words to this child, to let them know that you will come back here again. You will take it upon yourself to show up for them more consistently, so that they can believe that they really are worth it, so that they can believe the words you said and not just listen to it as if it was lip service. And so I invite you to say, I promise to look out for us. I promise to come back here in the moments when you feel scared, when you feel challenged. I know as an adult, when I get scared or challenged or angry, I know you are feeling something. And so I promise to come back here in all of those moments to soothe you, to make you feel safe, to make you feel heard, to make you feel loved and protected. You are the best thing that's ever happened to me. I wish I had time to recognize that before, but I promise you that I am here now, today, and I will come back. And with that, I invite you to visualize giving a kiss to this sweet little child on their cheek, feeling the warmth of those soft little young baby cheeks against your lips, their hair against your forehead, the warmth of their little body in your arms, feeling their little heartbeat beat against your own chest. You give them one last big hug as I invite you to hug yourself, warm and deep, and to slowly put this child down, knowing that it's your time to slowly leave. Let them go back to their world, but knowing that you'll be back to protect them. And whenever you're ready, I invite you all to slowly open up your eyes, but to slowly focus on your breathing as you do, and as you come back into the present moment with that feeling of safety and love.
That was great.
Thank you, Genell, for letting me do that.
Of course.
Give me the patience as I saw you like moving around with your phone to find the comfiest spot.
No, it's yeah, my phone. I use my phone too much. Do you ever have that problem? So I had to plug it in.
The timing. Terrible, Genell. You knew you had a live and you let your battery run low. That's
Sorry,
specific.
I had a client and I didn't realize after my call my phone wasn't even charging the whole hour.
But for those of you who did the meditation, how did you guys feel? I want to honestly hear from you guys. How did you feel? I know it may be, the thing about it is it's so new that for some of you, it may have felt weird. For some of you, you may not have been able to drop into it. For some of you, you may have been able to drop into it and release. Emily said he or she cried so much, and that's so beautiful for me to hear, because that's what's inside you, waiting to be recognized, waiting to be heard. Playing with light said they're surprised what came up, and this is so powerful because you're finally listening to that little being inside you who's waiting to be heard, who's waiting for their voice to be heard, and what they've been wanting to say to you for so long, which is that I'm scared of people leaving me. I'm scared that someone might abandon me again. I'm scared that someone won't love me for who I am. And that's the voice we need to hear and we need to pay attention to, and we need to love and we need to give connection to.
Right.
So.
And whatever memory came up is what you needed to hear at that time. Some people said they're like shocked. And you know what?
Yeah.
Sometimes that happens and you're like, I haven't thought about this since I was like 7. And that's like what needed to come up. And the tears is all healing and it's releasing energy that's been stuck in your body for so many years. So you guys are all like releasing so much.
Exactly.
I love it.
And just before I jump onto you, Genell, I just want to let you guys know that's the kind of work that I do in my space when I work with reparenting especially. And I've actually launched a new membership community today, and all of you who are on here, you get first access to it. I haven't yet put it up on my platform or put it out for the general public. Yeah, so the EFC community stands for the Emotional Freedom Collective Community, and it's basically a collective, a membership community where you get work like this, like light inner child meditations, you get to do journaling work, you get to be able to deal with the challenges that you're feeling in the present moment, month on month. And so we do 2 live calls every month where I'll do a teaching and then I'll do Q&As to answer directly some challenges and everything that you're having. And it is the most wonderful space to be able to work with so many other people who want healing just as yourself, just like you do. So we also do the gauntlet, which is a much more deep, intricate version of like healing, and that's, you know, that requires a commitment of time, especially. But this is a beautiful way to enter inner work. So for a lot of you who are wondering, okay, where can I start? Where can I begin? This is a beautiful space for you to enter inner work. We're going to be talking about polarity, mother wounds, father wounds, so much more on the live calls. Plus, you get a mini course as soon as you join. And the truth is, it's all literally just for $1. And if you guys join right now, if you go to EFC Community, because it's exclusively to you guys, you get to join right now for $1. So you can even try it. And if you don't like it, you don't have to go through. And then the membership kicks in as you go along anyway. So you get to try it now for the first like 2 weeks for $1. That's such low risk commitment. But I would say if you're looking for to step into healing and guiding, I have a whole team of people, including myself, who's going to show up for that with you in the EFC. And so please take a look at their website. It's pinned there, efccommunity.com. That's your best way to jump into it and start interacting already on the Facebook group, which we have ready and available for you guys. And so I also want to say that Genell here, the beautiful feminine Genell, who I have said to her, I was like, Genell, I can see your feminine energy coming out so strongly. And it's amazing. For me as the masculine, like, and this is very platonic, guys, don't worry about it. But as like, for me as the masculine, it's so amazing to be around. You know, as I've fallen more into my masculine, I've been so attracted to being around healthy feminine energy. I feel like I myself feel more masculine just being around it. And I know that you can be, and you are such a good leader, Janelle, to like so many women, especially to help them, give them a good identity of their own feminine. So why don't you tell us how you can offer help to so many of the people who have been on here on our work and our platform today?
First, oh, thank you. Thank you so much. First off, I want to congratulate you for launching your membership. That's amazing. That's
Thank you.
Freaking awesome. I'm super proud of you. Wish you much success, and I may need to just join that.
Yes. Thank you, my friend. Thank you for coming on.
And thank you. I worked so hard on this feminine, everyone. I really did. I was not like this like a year ago. And, you know, and even with the healing, I've seen my clients, like yesterday I had a client and I was like, you are so much more in your feminine. It's just like breaking through the healing is what like inside authentically who you really were meant to be all along. So it's so beautiful. As for me, so I'm like getting pretty booked, I'm not going to lie, which is a blessing, but there's only one of me, unfortunately. I wish there was more. So I am taking clients, and I did see someone that asked if either of us does one-on-one. I do one-on-one coaching. So if you feel called to work with me, I focus on women currently. I may expand to men eventually, but right now women is, I feel, so needed. What feels more aligned to me. And I help you heal your mother and father wounds. And we go into self-love and inner child, not as extensive, but we go into that where you meet your inner child and we do exercise and stuff. So I feel like after that, even before, if someone's already healed all of their parent wounds, Yats' program will be great either way. I actually am going to send you one of my clients who wants to do more of her inner child work. Because I help you, like, she's like, I've healed my mother and father wound now. And I'm like, that was the main thing we had the hardest thing doing on our first call. You couldn't do it. And now that we did it, it's like, what's the next thing? It's all about the healing and what we want to tackle next. So if you are someone who feels called to really finally address your father or mother wound, or if you have both parent wounds, feel free to reach out. I'm probably going to do a group coaching coming the new year or so. If I keep getting a surplus of one-on-one clients, because like I said, there's only one of me. So if you're interested, reach out to either of us, you know.
Is there any info you can put into the comments, Janelle, like a website or an
let me do that right now. Let me do that right now.
Come here. Whoa. Sorry, that was my cat. I'm reparenting my cat. He's a boy, and I'm providing him healthy masculinity. And so he's like, look at his face. He's like perpetually not excited by life.
He's like, so masculine.
Dude, I know. He's such a masculine cat, but he's so affectionate. I'm like, good boy. That's how you need
I love that. He's well balanced.
Yeah. Exactly. While you're doing that, Janelle, you're done with it.
No, I am that. So you guys can either go to the link in my bio or just, I don't even know if you can click that link, but it's parentwounds with an S coaching.com. And you can book a call with me. I am getting pretty booked. Again, I'm not just saying that. I could show you my whole thing, but I would love to take on whoever is looking for one-on-one.
Nice.
Coaching
Thank
in
you.
the future.
Yeah, and I want to because people are asked, it's, you know, if you're looking for one-on-one, Genell is a good bet. I don't unfortunately do one-on-one, especially because like I did it for many years, and I see Genell going this direction. You can only be stretched that much. So for me, I try like the same way to spread out what I can offer to like as many as I can, and I have a platform and a team that can. Sorry, there's hair all over the place. That can support it. So if you guys are looking for that space where you can get in deep with, however, I do specialize in theta level meditations, and that's subconscious level meditation. So I specialize in taking you back into like a lot of your memories to create release. What you saw today was like a tiny tip of the iceberg. It was 4 minutes. Our meditations are mostly like 20 minutes or so. So if you are interested in that, the gauntlet would be a good place to start. However, the gauntlet currently is stacked up. We're not taking any more until the next year. So what I would recommend, again, is to join the EFC community for just like $1 for the next 2 weeks. And then it's, I think, $30 a month. And you will get updates about when the gauntlet opens up again for people to come in. But for now, it's a good way to just have a membership space where you get, you know, updates, journal work, etc., to stay accountable to the work. You get to stay accountable to, you know, the inner work, to healing, to start the process. Because as we said, as you heal yourself, you start attracting better relationships. It just works.
You do.
And before we leave, I just want to say to everybody here, it's not easy showing up for yourself. It's not easy wanting to say, you know what, I want to be aware of what baggage and pain I'm bringing to the table. I want you all to put your hands on your heart for just 1 second. And this isn't some gimmick. This is the truth. I want you to put your hand on your heart for just 1 second. And I want you to say just 2 simple words. You can close your eyes, and I want you to say, thank you.
Thank you.
I just simply want you all to recognize, even just by showing up for this live, to like showing up to learn these things, practicing the meditation or not, you were here because you wanted to grow from something. You wanted to learn something. You wanted to heal with them. You wanted to get more perspective. And that is so tremendously important, because there are a billion around the world who, even if they have access, take that for granted. So give yourself credit for all that you're looking to do and you wanting to do for yourselves in the healing journey. And I just want to really appreciate all of you for really being here. So thank you for showing up. Thank you from my end. And Genell, you can say a few words, please.
Of course. Thank you. I just want you guys to all remind yourself that you are so worthy of healing. You are so worthy of love. You are so deserving of love. If someone's never told you that, or you don't feel that, you really are. And don't settle for less than what you know you deserve. I'm telling you. Once you do the work, you realize how valuable you really are in this lifetime. And we only have one life, and we need to make sure that we are valued within and with others.
Absolutely. And to add to that, I would say take everything what Genell said to heart and realize that you have to now take the responsibility of teaching your value. Don't wait for someone else to come value you.
Do not.
You have to learn, you have to make the commitment, but you have to love the journey of teaching yourself who you are, how important you are, and what your life really means to yourself, how you want to enjoy relationships, how you want to be authentic. That's all now in your hands. And with that, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Genell, so much. I really enjoyed this. This is probably one of my favorite lives that I've done.
Because it's me. I'm just kidding.
The feminine.
No, that's actually I was actually I was like kind of nervous about it before, because you were so like in your masculine of like logical, and I was like, I felt like I was like going to be interviewed on like Oprah.
But I know, but it came to like the right combination of like the feminine of flow and the masculine of like of balance and like of structure. And I think that's what like good communication, good relationships, good communication does, right? I said communication twice, but good relationships and understanding and connection is having that balance of both of them. So
right, I think people can really feel it through us, so it's amazing. And like I said, all the hard work I've done finally is paying off.
Yes, you go attract that sexy masculine man now, Genell.
I shall.
All right. Thank you, everybody. This has been beautiful. Thank you for dedicating your time here tonight.
Yes,
You are what makes us love the job that we do. So
absolutely. You guys really are.
thank you. All right.
All
Take care,
right.
Janelle.
Have a
I'll
good
see you
night.
later. Have a
I'll
good
talk
night.
to you
Bye.
soon. All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.